5 steps done, and I'm here. Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see you again, a third day, and you are still here. I'm really glad and happy. I will push the record button as well. Perfect. I hope I'm all set. Okay. First of all, I would love to say big welcome to Devon. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much
I'm
for having me.
I'm so glad you are here. Your last live talk that we had in the Childhood Potential Club had an amazing feedback from all of the attendees. So I think everyone will love our talk today, and I can't wait. We have such an interesting topic of limits, so I think it will be fun. First of all, in the chats, tell me, how are you? How is your third day of the conference? I will be watching here the chat and here on the YouTube, so you will see me going with my eyes around. And you can tell us, where are you from? Where are you watching us from? If you're a parent, teacher, how old are your children? It's nice to see everyone. Just as an explanation, here on Zoom, we have all of the people who registered with the VIP pass or who are the members of the Childhood Potential Club. And on YouTube, we have everyone who is registered for the conference for free. Okie doke. So let's start. I see Finland, Missouri, Switzerland, UK, Texas, France, Czech Republic. Hi. I'm also here in Czech. Perfect. I see some African countries. Ukraine. Perfect. Germany. Good. Okie doke. First, let me say a few words about you, Devon, and maybe you can add something if I forget something,
Mhm.
but I hope I won't. Of course, you are a mom. You are also an author of the book that everyone saw the image when they were coming. Uh, Sorry, I can't see. It's okay. It's okay. You created Transforming Toddlerhood website. Now you have the book. You have a community of more than 1 million parents and caregivers who are committed to transforming their parenting and the childhood of their children and their toddlers' behavior and overall experience of toddlerhood. Uh, what did I forget? Help me out.
Well, I think that that is the biggest part. I'm a mom to a 3-year-old. I am an ICF certified coach and I have a background in child development and psychology. And I started transforming toddlerhood in 2018 with the mission to dispel the myth that toddlerhood is terrible and to really support parents and caregivers in overcoming the everyday challenges while nurturing their little one's development and creating confidence in their own parenting skills using healthy effective tools and strategies that really work with your child's development, not against it. Because the more we understand a child's development, the more we can align our parenting practices to work with their development, we will see less power struggles and things become easier.
Perfect. And today we are going to talk about setting limits. Why did you choose this topic?
I chose this topic. It is one of my favorite topics to talk about because it is the one that is most important for parents and a topic that is most misunderstood, especially today. There is, we've been talking about gentle parenting, positive parenting for many years now, and we see how the research that we've learned in the last 10, 15, 20 years about child development supports the use of positive and gentle parenting. But the challenge is that gentle parenting has been getting misconstrued. And now a lot of people, you see a lot of online forums where people are saying, oh, gentle parenting is ruining an entire generation of kids. It's raising an entire generation of kids that are entitled and have no limits or boundaries. And this is where the biggest misconception comes from and where things get confusing and misunderstood. Gentle parenting does not mean there are no limits and no limits, and that we only focus on feelings and emotions. Gentle parenting, positive parenting, this is all another name for authoritative parenting, which is the type of parenting in the research where we are taking our child's feelings, emotions, and needs into consideration, but we're also setting clear limits and boundaries and following through on them. And here at Transforming Toddlerhood, I even take that a step further and to say that we create the connection by taking care of the feelings and emotions, we set limits and follow through, and we teach skills because most of the behaviors that we see, especially in young children, are communicating a feeling, emotion, or need, or they are a skills deficit where your child does not have the impulse control skills or the emotional regulation skills to do what we expect of them in that moment. And by setting clear limits and helping your child follow through on them and teaching the skills, that's how we transform behavior. And so I just want everyone to know that gentle parenting means we are taking care of feelings and emotions and setting clear limits. And that's where a lot of confusion comes from.
Perfect. I would love to maybe encourage everyone to write in the chat what what troubles are you dealing with when it comes to limits? When is it hard to keep the limits? When is it hard to set the limits to your children? Join with us or share with us so we can get some inspiration. And then I have my first question. What are the common mistakes we accidentally make with setting limits?
Yes, when we set limits, oftentimes there's a few things that happen. So, first, we expect our child just to listen because we set the limit. But oftentimes we forgot to create connection first. So maybe we're like yelling the limit from across the room. Or maybe we are near our child and making eye contact and down on their level and creating connection, but we set the limit and then we think, well, now I said what they should do, so now they should just do it. The challenge is that toddlers have are lacking impulse control skills, so oftentimes they need our support and following through. So if we think that they're just going to follow through on their own because we are the parent and we told them so, we're going to be disappointed and frustrated because kids actually need help following through. And I think the second mistake that we make is thinking that the only way to set limits is to tell your child no, no, stop, no, don't do that. Because when we overuse the word no, it loses its power. So kids will start to tune it out. So when you really need your child to stop, like they're running toward the street on the drive, like from the driveway, or they're like maybe near a body of water and you need them to freeze or something like this, they are less likely to listen because they become desensitized to no. Also, if we're only using the word no to set a limit, we are working against our child's development because toddlerhood is all about your child becoming their own person. And one way they do that is by saying no, right? They're testing the limits and they're seeing, what's going to happen when they do that. So if we're always saying no, then we are triggering their developmental drive to push against us and become their own person. So we're likely going to see a lot more power struggles. So these are some of the common mistakes that happen with setting limits that make parenting harder. Now, if you're a parent or a caregiver who has been setting limits in this way, this doesn't make you bad. This doesn't make you a failure. It's just what I'm saying is it's just not super effective. And so this is just an invitation to learn something new and to practice something new. And what we always say here at Transforming Toddlerhood is that each and every moment is an opportunity to practice again. All you have to do is accept the invitation. All you have to do is say, yes, I'm going to try again. And when you have that growth mindset, that willingness to try again, that's where the magic happens.
Let me share some of the comments that I see
Sure.
either on Zoom or on YouTube. Uh, Jocelyn is saying that she has trouble setting limits when my 3-year-old always is interfering with my baby's play, rough playing. Richard was saying problem at work, saying no. Marietta, problem executing those when the children are tired or hungry. Richard also wrote that he is a people pleaser. And Layla was saying, my almost 4-year-old is speaking rudely or disrespectfully to her grandmother, my mom, or saying things like, I don't love her, or it's her fault in response to me setting a limit or not giving her what she wants. So, balancing not getting into a power struggle about how she should speak to her or about her, and also modeling, setting limits about consequences when she says things like, no, I don't love you, go away, especially when she's hungry, tired, or dysregulated. Not safe, or another reason, comment from Richard. Um, and there are so many other comments. Let me check also YouTube. Um, I struggle with her showing affection to other kids. She's constantly trying to hug them, but they don't always want it. Having troubles when transitions need to happen. When the kid is crying and I'm not maybe prepared to know the limits beforehand. So maybe not having clarity before. Okay, so these
Yeah.
are the comments. Did you find something interesting?
Well, I'd love to just comment on the last thing. And this is one of the most important things about setting limits. And it's so hard when we're in the moment and we're like overstimulating our child's crying, but we don't want to set a limit unless we're willing to follow through on it. This is probably one of the other common mistakes is that we set a limit, our child has a big reaction, and then we're like, okay, okay, okay. Why did I set that limit? Now they're crying. There's a tantrum. Like, okay, I take it back. I take it back. I take it back. But if we take it back, then our children see that when they have a big outburst, that we are more likely to take away the limit. And then they're like, clock that as, oh, this is a way to get my needs and desires met. So now we've just reinforced that big reaction from our kids. And so, one thing, I almost want to call it a rule, but I don't like calling things rules. But one very important guideline to keep in mind, the most important guideline is to remember only set limits you're willing to follow through on because consistency is so important with children, whether they're 1 or they're 13. The kids know when we're being serious or not. And so, consistency doesn't mean perfect. It means more often than not, it's predictable. We're going to respond in a certain way. So you don't have to be perfect, but you've got to be willing to follow through on the limits you set. And if you don't want to follow through on it, don't set the limit because if you backpedal, can often your kids will stop respecting the limits that you set and then start not listening, right? They'll just be like, okay, she's not serious or he's not serious, right? So that's something came up for me whenever you said that last comment. I'm like, yes, it's really hard though when your child's crying. So what I recommend is in that moment, take a moment to establish safety. So I talk about this in my book, which is right over here. This idea of establishing safety, where you establish the physical safety. So if your child's like hitting you or doing something dangerous, you address that. Then you tell yourself, this is not an emergency. I am safe and my child's safe. So you're telling your brain, which is in fight or flight mode, feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated. You tell your brain, hey, you're perceiving a threat right now, but there's really no threat here. It's okay. And so then what you can do from there is start grounding yourself and doing what you do to ground yourself in those moments, and then helping your child calm down. And when you can think clearly again, that's when you start to address the behavior. And then you can go through the recipe for effective discipline, or the 3-step process I have for setting limits, which I can give you all an example right now if that's helpful. So let's just say I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a good, let's say for a toddler. Toddlers love playing in water. So say you have a dog at home and the dog water dish is right there on the floor and your toddler's going up there and kind of like splashing water here, playing in the water. So the first thing you want to do is create that connection. So you want to get down on their level, maybe put a hand on their shoulder and say something like, um, there's water on the floor. Looks like you want to play with water. And then you set the limit. The dog's water stays in the bowl. And then you find a way forward, which is looks like you want to play with water. Let's fill the sink and play with some water. Let's take a bath. Let's go outside and play in your water table. Let's put the water table in the shower. Let's, whatever. There's a million ways that you can redirect your child. So, a lot of the times when we remember that your child's behavior is trying to express a feeling, emotion, or need or desire, then you're like, okay, how can I meet my child's needs within my limits? So instead of just saying, no, stop that. Don't play in the dog's water. I told you not to do that. Stop it. I said, stop it. What we need to do is come up to them and say, this is the dog's water, and then say it stays in the bowl, and then find another way to meet that need within our boundaries. And say they keep playing with the water, they keep going in. That's when you say, I won't let you play in this water. And you pick them up and you move them away from it. That's helping your child follow through. If we just wait for our kids to follow through on their own, we're going to be waiting a long time because they're lacking the impulse control to be able to do that. So that's just like one simple example of how we can move from going, no, no, stop, don't do that, to creating the connection, setting the limit and following through, and then redirecting, finding a way forward, teaching a skill to help our child be successful in those moments and meet their need within our boundaries.
Thank you. What do you do if the child says no and has this huge emotional reaction, which I think each one of us can imagine really well?
Yes. So there's a couple of different things we need to think about here. Now, if your child just says no, but they're not going into like a hysterical meltdown, like they're still somewhat regulated, but they're just like saying no and it's like a refusal, we're probably going to handle that differently than if your child's like, no, and then they're like falling to pieces and having like a complete meltdown. But before I tell you the two different ways to handle that, I want us to think about something. When we're setting limits, it's so important for everyone to know their job. And when setting limits, just like in all different situations in parenting, children have a job and the parent has a job. So the parent's job, and think of it kind of like as a game of like ping pong or tennis or pickleball, whatever. It's like a back and forth. It's the parent's job to set the limits. It's the child's job to test the limits. That's what toddlers do. They test limits to see if we're serious. So it's your job to follow through on the limit to help your child be successful in meeting the expectation. It's your child's job to have a big reaction when they see you're serious about that limit. And then it's your job to support the big emotions by staying calm and holding space for their big emotions while still following through on the limit. You don't let them go back into the dog's water, even if they get upset. And then it's your child's job to accept the limit. The crying, the big emotions, the things that happen there is your child offloading their frustration of not having more control over their lives, their disappointment of not getting to do the thing they wanted to do. And that is all very, very natural. We cannot force our children to be happy, to accept the limit. We have to let them have their emotional release and come back to their emotional equilibrium. So it's our job to set the limit, follow through, and support the big emotions. So, that being said, we don't want to fear the big emotions. And oftentimes, the big emotions happen, we get worried and then we backpedal. So, just know that this is not your child being bad, rude, or difficult on purpose. They're having a hard time. So, you want to stay calm in those moments. And as long as your child is safe, You want to, make sure that you can just stay calm and stay grounded in those moments. And you want to just practice accepting and acknowledging your child's feelings. So, if they're crying, you can just say something like, "That's disappointing. I know." Keep it short and simple, where you empathize with them, but you're not like diving too deep in their emotions. But you let them know you're there for them. So you can say something like, "That's so frustrating. That's disappointment. That's disappointing." Or what did I say to my son the other night? Um, he was upset because I set a limit on something. Now I can't even remember 2 nights ago, but I remember we were in his room and he was really upset about it. And he actually said, because he's 3.5, so he said, "Now I'm mad at you." And then I said, "Oh, you're feeling really mad about that." He's like, "Yes." So that's where, we want to just validate their feelings and emotions while holding the limit. And then once they offload all those feelings and emotions, they'll come back to their emotional equilibrium and we'll be able to move forward. But what happens if your child just flat out looks at you and says, "No"? Okay. So in that moment, we have a decision to make. Are we going to say, "Well, I told you so, so you need to do it," and then we get locked into this power struggle, start getting frustrated, all the things? Or are we going to get curious? So you might say something like, "I hear you saying no. Tell me more about that. What's going on?" So we can see this is for like an older toddler, 3 or 4, or an older child. You might say, "What's your plan?" or "What's your idea?" And oftentimes, if children have space to say what they're thinking, we understand more about their behavior. And then we can see, okay, what makes sense here? Can we incorporate what they're thinking or what they want to do? Would that be within my limit and boundary? Maybe it will be, maybe not. Sometimes, especially if you have a younger toddler, they're going to be like, "No." And you're going to have to be like, "Okay, well, what do I do here? I don't want to get stuck in a power struggle. So what do I do?" So you might use a parenting tool called when and then, or some people call it first then. So you might say, "Okay, well, when you brush your teeth, then we can read stories together. I'm going to go pick out some books." And then you move forward. You just move forward and you start picking out the books. Now they'll probably follow you, and that's when you come back and you still hold the limit. You say, "Oh, I'm so excited to read books with you, but we got to get these teeth brushed. Do you want to brush them or do you want me to?" And then hopefully, you'll be able to move forward with it. But if they're still like, "No," then you say, "All right, well, do it when you're ready. I'm going to go start reading books." And then you move forward. And so when children see that we're serious and that we're not fussed by them saying no, that we're not going to have a big reaction, we're not going to get locked in a power struggle, that we're just going to keep going on about what we're doing, then they're going to be like, "Okay." And they're going to be more likely to hop on board. So I'll stop there and I'll let you guys think about that, ask some follow-up questions. Lucy, if you have anything you want to say.
Yeah, no, I was just going through the questions here.
Mhm.
And there was one follow-up question. I don't
Oh,
have
I
it.
see here. Someone said the jobs part went too fast. And thank you, Jocelyn, for jumping in. Sorry,
Yeah.
sometimes I talk fast. So I'll just go through it slowly. It's the parent's job to set the limit. It's the child's job to test it. It's the parent's job to follow through. It's the child's job to have a big reaction. It's the parent's job to support the emotions. And it's the child's job to accept the limit. We can't force them to accept the limit. They've got to offload their emotions, have that emotional release to come back to their emotional equilibrium. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. And there is a question here on Zoom from Brenda.
Mhm.
Brenda from New York, United States. "I have 4-year-old daughter who is having power struggles with me almost every morning this week. I used to handle this with moving her from one room to another by carrying her there, but I'm currently 32 weeks pregnant and I'm no longer able to do that. How can I follow through my limit without having to move her to another place?"
So I'd love to answer that, but I'm not quite sure what the limit is here. So Brenda, if you are still here, if you could just type into the chat what the specific limit is so it gives me more context so I can help you solve that. But usually what we need to do if we're not moving our child, which is actually a lot harder, what we need to do is move ourselves and move forward. And then our children will likely follow us. And that's when we say, oh, well, when you do X, Y, and Z, then we'll do this. And then you try to help them do that thing again or like meet that limit or expectation. And then if they're not ready, you move yourself, you keep moving forward, and then, come back, revisit the limit with the child. Breakfast not being ready in the morning because I
In
need
the
to
morning.
prep it and brushing teeth before breakfast. Yes. Um, so one thing that we can do here, I often have this challenge with my child too. And this will also answer some previous questions about kids being hungry and tired. When children's basic needs are not met, right? So say they are hungry, they're tired, they're in need of connection, whatever it may be. They don't feel safe. The basic needs that we all have as human beings. When those aren't met, our children are going to be less likely to listen and more likely to melt down, say no, and get in a power struggle with us. So in the morning, some kids have lower blood sugar than others, and it's really hard for them to do things like brush teeth or wait for us to get breakfast ready. So, one way to make this easier, because if we want to serve our kids like a good, nutritious breakfast, it takes a minute to prepare it, right? So, it's really hard. So here's a couple of things that you could do. You could consider offering them like an appetizer, like something small, like a half a banana or something like this to like kind of tie them over. Or you can set out the night before when you first wake up, kind of like a little breakfast snack, a pre-breakfast appetizer, basically. Depending on what it is, you put out the night before when you first wake up. And you could make these in batches, freeze it, get it out of the freezer the night before, whether it's like a protein muffin or a protein ball or something like this, but you give them something small. For my son, it's something called Kiki milk. It's a plant-based milk that he gets like a small amount of, and that is enough for him to be satisfied until we have breakfast. But doing this will make breakfast go so much easier in the morning without the meltdowns and the power struggles. And your child might be more likely to brush their teeth because they're not like so hungry. And so that's the main thing I would actually do in that moment to resolve that.
Thank you.
Lucy, there was a question
Mhm.
before that came up. I actually heard a couple of times, like this idea almost of like back talk, like kids saying
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that are
yeah.
kind of like what we would label as rude or not nice or disrespectful. This came up in a couple of questions, and I thought this might be a good moment to address that
Go
if you're
ahead.
okay. Okay, great. Because I really love this topic.
And do
And
you want me to read the questions as well, or we will target the topic in
I'll just
general?
target the topic, and then if
Perfect.
you can look at the questions, and if there's
I
anything I
have
should
them.
follow up on, I'm happy to. So my book is actually 45 mini chapters that in each chapter is a different parenting challenge and how to overcome it. So one of the mini chapters in my book is about back talk, right? What we might call back talk, which is like saying, you're not my friend, you're mean, go away, things that we might label as rude and disrespectful. So, in these moments, we need to, if possible, stop looking at the behavior through a logical lens. As an adult with a fully mature brain, we look at that and we put a label on it. That's rude, that's bad, that's disrespectful. But really, all behavior is communication. What is it communicating? Basic needs, sensory needs, developmental needs, your child's level of brain maturation. That's what this is communicating. So, once we get out of the idea of labeling behavior as good or bad, we can start asking ourselves, what is my child really trying to say here? What are they really communicating? Because when we can decode the behavior, then we can address it. We can address the real reason the behavior is happening and transform it. So, in this case, when your child is saying something like, you're mean, I don't like you, Go away. You want to use a tool I call translation. You might say something like, I hear you saying go away. I wonder what has you saying this. Or if you kind of know, you might say, I wonder if you're upset that I said no more cookies. Something like this. Or if you say, like, your child saying you're mean, you say, I hear you saying you're mean. I wonder if you're trying to say you're upset that we're not going to the park right now, or whatever it is. Basically, we want to give our kids the words they need to be successful. Because when you have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds who recently just got a very good command of expressive language, but they don't have the emotional maturation, we have to meet them where they're at. And where they're at is using the biggest words they know to get the biggest reaction to get their point across. So when we give them the words that they actually are trying to communicate, then they learn to communicate in a better way. So we de-escalate ourselves because we realize this is not personal. It's not disrespectful. And then we are curious, we get to the root of what they're trying to say, and then we're modeling a better way to say it. And then we can help our children with their big feelings or whatever is happening from that. But what we need to understand is, like, this is not rude or disrespectful behavior. This is a dysregulated child or a child experiencing big emotions. We have to help them have the correct words to express themselves.
Perfect, thank you. I have another big topic, which I think is actual for more people, but I will read it as one question here. Let me find it. It was about, yeah, here. How to work with my children and my partner when he has problems setting the limits. He makes the demands, but he doesn't follow through. So I think the general question is, when the partners are not really on the same side,
Mhm.
and it's just one of the parents trying to set the limits and follow through, but the other one isn't really helping in.
Yes. Yes. And that is a big struggle for a lot of families. And so I have a chapter in my book about that because this comes up every day. In all of the surveys I've done with my community, thousands and thousands of parents, when it comes to their biggest challenge, having an unsupportive partner is by far the number one challenge overall parents feel they're facing in implementing the things that they're learning. The truth of the matter is that you and your parenting partner are two unique people with very different personalities and experiences, different ways that you were raised, um, so many different life experiences, and that all impacts how we parent. So the goal is not to get on the same page. I always say if we're waiting to get on the same page, we're probably gonna be waiting a long time. Of course, it happens in some relationships, but you know, it's not really gonna happen in most. So what we want to do is get into the same book because we don't want to be in this book over here and this book over here, and now your parenting ways of parenting are competing. So this does take a parenting partner that's somewhat open. And if you're in a committed relationship with this person, hopefully they're willing to hear you enough to be open enough to considering what you have to say to try to get into the same book. This isn't always true. Sometimes we're in relationships that, are not great. And I just want to recognize that sometimes we're in relationships that are not working. And so this can be more of a challenge. So in my book, I have the scripts of exactly how to have a conversation with your parenting partner to bridge the gap. So you can actually, this is not something you want to do in the heat of the moment. In the heat of the moment, as long as your child is safe, physically and emotionally safe, let your parenting partner go and then come back in a calm moment when your child's not around and have the conversation. But what you want to do is get curious. Get curious about what they tried to do, why they tried to do it, and how it went for them, their experience of it. Bring some facts to the table about what you learned, and then get curious again on what they think about it, and then ask if they'd be willing to give it a try. But in the end, you can't force someone to be open minded. You can't force someone to give it a try. So, one of the most powerful things that we can do for our kids, there's two things, is just model the skills that we want our parenting partner to use, model that, use it with our kids. When when our parenting partner sees it working for us with our kids, then they might be more interested in it. And then help your child make sense of what is happening in the relationship with their parenting with your parenting partner. And you might even empower your child to say like, well, if they said I didn't like that, that scared me, I didn't like that, then you encourage them with your support to be like, hey, okay, now you wanted to tell daddy, what you thought about that. Why don't you tell him that? And then like support facilitating the conversation. So then your parenting partner can also see the impact of like their words and things like that. That's something that can be really helpful too, is helping our kids make sense of it, helping our kids express themselves. And there was one more tip that I had there, but it's out of my brain at the moment, but maybe it'll come back. But those are the main things that you want to do and focus on, because we can't force someone to do. Oh, the other thing was, maybe in the calm moments, you might ask your parenting partner, hey, like parenting's hard. Sometimes we both get frustrated, things like that. I don't want to interrupt you when you're, doing something, but I also want to check in to see if you need support. So, how would you like me to check in those moments? So, maybe make an agreed upon word or phrase in advance so you can like come in and say, hey, is everything okay here? And then that will give your parenting partner like the option to be supported by you in the moment, or to kind of tap out if it's like, if they're too overwhelmed. So talking about things in the calm moments can make a big difference in the challenging moments. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Erin is asking if you have any recommendations for parents who were raised authoritarian and are being frustrated or triggered by children raised by authoritative or gentle parenting.
Yeah, it's really challenging. And this is where we hope to be in a relationship with someone who is open to growth and open to change and open to hearing these things. And oftentimes it even requires like, going to therapy to like work through some of these triggers and, childhood wounds. Sometimes it can be done through meditation. Sometimes it can be done through just journaling and having conversations together and things like that. But ideally, they have to be open. They have to be open to the idea, or open to change, open to something, right? If they're not, that's where we have to like know we can't force someone to see things the way that we do or want them to. And so what we have to do is maybe like talk up to them about in the calm moments, like the impact that it's having on like the relationship with the child, the relationship and the parenting partnership, things like that. But it's challenging because they have to be willing to be open and do some work, and not everyone is. So I think the first thing is like taking the temperature of like the situation, like how open is this person to having this conversation. And that's where you want to use the scripts from my book to have that conversation in a way that has you coming in curious versus coming in telling them how bad and wrong they are. Because anyone who's made to feel bad or wrong is most likely going to shut down. Um, right? Because that's just human nature. And that's also what happens with our kids. So we have to come in with curiosity versus like correction or like telling or accusations, which is challenging when we feel passionate about something. So,
Perfect. Thank you. I'm reading the questions here.
mhm.
There's another couple of questions that go around a child throwing things when they
Mhm.
get angry. Or, mm, we talked about when they say things that we don't really want them to say. What about if they, yeah, throw things or throw themselves or
Yeah.
hurt someone?
So, what we have to understand when it comes to throwing things is that, especially if a child's between ages 1 and 5, there are things called play schemas, and then children have go through these different schemas, and it's part of their development. And so, part of child development is like kids are actually throwing things to learn about the environment, to learn about their bodies. So it depends on if they're throwing things from a place of like play and curiosity, or they're like throwing something because they're mad and upset. Because it depends, that will depend on how we redirect them, right? Because if your child's throwing something, but even if they're throwing something because they're mad and upset versus just throwing things in general, we still want to make it safe, right? So the first step is to give them something that's safe to throw, like maybe socks that are in a ball or a bean bag or something that is, softer and that's okay. That's the first step. But if a child's really upset and things like that, what we want to do instead of telling them to stop throwing, which is probably going to make them feel not seen and heard and make things harder, we want to say something like, "You're so upset, you want to throw something." And then you might say, "Here, you can throw this. This is safe to throw. Trains aren't safe to throw. Cars aren't safe to throw. This lovey, this is safe to throw." You know, but then what we want to do is really get to like the root of the upset, because when we can speak to the root of the upset, that's how we transform the behavior. So that's the most important thing there. I also saw some questions about teeth brushing. And so I have a whole chapter on that in my book too. And there's so many different things that you can do to get your child out of a cycle of refusal of teeth brushing. The one thing to do is have three toothbrushes, one for each of their hands and one for your hand. So now everyone, they have toothbrushes and you have your own. Another thing is to brush teeth at a different moment. So if you're always brushing teeth at the same time and there's a lot of refusal, move it to a different place in the schedule or the rhythm to break up the power struggle. Sometimes when my son was going through a phase of big time toothbrush refusal, I actually brought the toothbrush to his bedroom and then I kind of hold him kind of like a baby, or like lean him back some, or even lean him back on my stomach, and then brush his teeth that way. That seems to work really, really well. So change the environment, change like where it falls in the routine, change the position that you're doing it in, and make it fun and playful. So you might be like, "Oh, can you brush my teeth? Here, go brush my teeth." Ah, and then you brush their teeth. Or you might say, "Oh my gosh, is that chicken in there? Wait a minute. Were you eating chicken? I see a piece of chicken." Just like anything you can do to be silly. Like, "Oh, look, it's hiding in there. Let's go get it." Anything you can be playful or silly will help reduce the power struggle as well.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that everyone sees the link for the book, both here on Zoom and then on YouTube as well. So I shared the link to the book on Amazon.
Mhm.
And there is another question about jealousy.
Oh,
My 3-year-old has to share his toys now with his baby sister, and once he sees her playing with something, he has to snatch it back.
yes. It's so challenging because You know, when you have a second child, the firstborn is kind of like dethroned in a way. But the thing is that what they're really wondering is, am I important? Am I still loved? What's my place in the family now? Because the dynamics have completely changed and they don't know what to do with that and how to process it. So, in my book, I have a whole chapter on navigating a new sibling and on sharing. And what I would say is that I love that this parent is thinking about this right now, because if you allow the 3-year-old to just snatch the toys because the baby doesn't care, because, for the first 6 to 9 months, the baby doesn't really care. But one day, your baby's going to wake up on the cusp of toddlerhood and start caring. And now this dynamic has been set up for many months, and it's going to be even harder for the older child then. At the same time, we have to remember that a 3-year-old still is very much kind of like a baby because they have a very immature brain. So we just have to work with everyone. So, what I like to do is to, first of all, for like the baby, you might like designate some toys that are like, just for the baby to play with, that are like, just for the baby. But at the same time, My 3-year-old loves playing with the baby toys, and sometimes we get them out. We don't have a baby around the house, but I still have them in case we have another one or someone brings their baby over, and he's like, I want to play with the baby toys. So the easier thing to do is to say that the toys are for everyone, and that if someone's playing with it, it is not available. And if they're playing with it, if they're playing with it, it's not available. If they're playing with it, it's not available. If no one is playing with it, then it's available. Starting this from the beginning is going to save a lot of sibling conflict down the road, even though your toddler is likely to be upset. So when they get upset, you say, I know. This is new and different. You've never had to share your toys before, and now there's a sibling here, and you don't want to share your toys. I know it's so hard. I'm here to help you. They're going to be upset. They're going to have a tantrum. They're going to scream and yell. But when you stay calm and you follow through on the limit by holding the limit and not budging, that tantrum will eventually be over. And then the next day, they'll have that tantrum again, but it's going to be shorter. And the next day, they'll have it again and it'll be shorter. And then somewhere between 3 days and a couple of weeks, it depends on how tenacious your child is. And I hate to say it, but it's true. Your child will stop having that tantrum the majority of the time, and they'll be okay with it when they see that this is the way it goes. But they're going to have a lot of big feelings and emotions, which is normal because they're adjusting to a whole new way of being with a sibling in the picture. But I really recommend to parents setting it up this way from the start, because if you wait 6 to 9 months and then wait for the baby to start caring, then it's going to be so much harder to change this dynamic.
Someone is asking a question if when they get, for example, a birthday present, is it
Yes.
still the toy? It's not your toy?
Yep. Yes. So this is where families have to decide this, and every family is different. I know families that are like, okay, if you got a birthday gift, that's your toy. I know families that are like, your toys are like the ones that you keep in your room, and the toys that are out are community toys. And I know families who are like, this toy, all the toys are community no matter what, because we're a family unit. And the only thing that's really yours is like your lovey, right? Because your lovey is like your comfort object, right? You're like, you shouldn't have to share your lovey. And so every family chooses to handle that differently. And there's not a right way or a wrong way. What's important is that you create a clear way. But I tend to feel that the easiest way to do that is that all the toys are for everyone except for the lovey, but maybe there's one or two items that are really special and then they stay like on a shelf in a bedroom or something like this. And of course, those special items can rotate or whatever, but um, you've got to think about what works for your family, but there's not a right or wrong way. It's about picking a clear way and sticking to it. That's what's important.
Okay. Uh, we start another live talk in 12 minutes. So I would say I would ask one last question.
Okay.
And that would be more of a question. If there is something that you still think that we didn't hear or that we didn't touch, and you think that it's important to say.
Yes. Um, when it comes, I'm just going to keep it because there's so many things I
Mhm,
could say, right?
mhm.
But I'm just going to keep it to setting limits and parenting in general, is that young children have very little life experience. They haven't been here for a long time. So they don't necessarily know what to expect. Like when we go to the store, it's clear to us we know what to expect, right? But kids don't know. So if you're going to like, a store, you might say what you're doing there and what you will or will not do. Like when I go to Target, I might say, "Hey, we're going to Target to get X, Y, and Z." And then I'll say, "We won't be buying any toys today." And then sometimes my son will be like, "Can we go look at the toys?" And I'll be like, "I'll happy to take you to look at the toys, and we won't be buying any today." So we're already setting the expectation in advance. Oftentimes we forget to set the expectation in advance. So the limit comes as a surprise for our child. And when the limit comes as a surprise, it's going to be harder for them to accept. and harder for us to follow through on because they're going to have a big reaction. So just think about setting expectations in advance and letting your child know what to expect before you go somewhere. Even the night before, let them know what to expect the next day. When they wake up in the morning, let them to know what to expect. Limits give your child a sense of predictability and safety. Limits are very, very good for kids to have. But at the same time, your child is trying to become their own person. So they're going to push against limits. So it's a contradiction. They need the limits to feel safe and secure, but they're going to push against them because it gets in the way of their developmental drive. So know that if you're having a challenge there, if your child is getting upset when you set limits, no one's bad or wrong. This is a normal, typical part of development. You're not doing anything wrong.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was really, really wonderful. And if you want to continue the conversation, come follow me at Transforming Toddlerhood on Instagram, or you can come to my website, transformingtoddlerhood.com. You can do that /book to find out all the places around the world you can buy my book. And I will be hosting a summit as well very soon. So come over and join us if you have kids ages 1 to 5 and you want to dive deeper in that age group. Thank you so much.
Perfect. I just wanted to actually say to everyone where they can find you and that you are going to
Oh,
host Summit soon and we will
oh,
send everyone a link. So
perfect.
you said everything instead of me.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
But
And it's just been a pleasure. I love meeting all of you. And it's truly it's really special that I could come here today and support everyone. So thank you for being here. Thanks for having me, Lucy.
thank you for accepting. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the conference by being here, by answering all of the questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And to everyone here, we start in 8 minutes with Sylvia. And I think you will love her talk as well. Sylvia is going to talk about, let me say the topic exactly. So I know it's about resilience, but I want to give you the exact name of the session: building resilience and preparing your child for today's world. And I think many of you know Sylvia Artin. She has been the speaker at this conference for, I think, all of the 9 times that we have been doing this. So I know that you will like it. You have the links in your emails to Zoom and to YouTube. So I will see you in a few minutes. And thanks to everyone who is keeping around, keep showing up. And at the end of the next session, we are also going to draw one person who is going to win 3 months in the Childhood Potential Club for showing up today. So I will see you in a few minutes. And Devon, again, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here and thank you for supporting us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.